All right, 2D rendering. I got to start. Oh, I started the recording. Okay, cool. Okay. All right.
Got it.
Yes, sir. All right. So 2D rendering workshop. So this is for the Unity engine. Let's get straight into it. So sample project link is in the Discord. I'm not going to go over this too much, but open the GitHub link, go to code and download zip, yada, yada, yada. This is for people who go to the slides later and they need a guide for it. So things we're discussing today, we're going to talk about implementing artwork, so dragging it into your project and talking about what kinds of things you need to do before you even put it into your project. We're going to look at the Texture 2D asset in the sprite renderer. Those are your most core components for doing any sort of rendering. We're going to look at the universal render pipeline, so that's your base settings for your rendering. We're going to look at the camera. We're going to look at global volumes, which is the most basic version of post-processing. We're going to look at UI. And then at the very end, we're going to look at some resources.
Can you pause?
Yes, sir.
Can you pause real quick? Sorry. We didn't start stage, so the waiting music is still playing.
Oh my! Still playing? No way.
Reset the whole thing.
Reset the whole thing.
At the
Stage.
It's okay. You guys get exclusive more time with Mr.
Yes.
Gary here.
More time with me today. Boom.
Hell yeah.
Awesome.
Damn, two
Alright,
people
so
left.
you're
Wait,
now?
no? Wait, no? Wait, damn, no.
Yeah.
What the hell is messaging?
All right. Let's continue.
Oh,
Someone left.
damn. Someone left.
All right. Okay. Don't go back. All right. So first thing we're doing is implementing artwork. So let's talk about the bare bones drawing software. Any software is good. Just make sure that when you're animating, you can export as individual images. That's very important for doing 2D art. Unless you're doing some sort of thing where it's like a mechanical sort of thing, you're mainly just going to be doing export individual images. Some examples: Sprite for pixel art. Photoshop is direct support. So if you import via Photoshop file like PSD or PSB, that works. And Krita is free if you guys need a drawing software. Also for importing, so for getting your drawings from a tablet to a computer, use like email. Don't use Discord. There's a couple reasons why you shouldn't use Discord. For one, Discord doesn't allow any size below or above 10 megabytes. Sometimes it'll turn your image from a PNG to a JPEG. That's a no-no. And also, sometimes it'll turn off the transparency in your images, so that's not great. File formatting, PNG. .png is use it. JPEG, no. .gif, unless you know how to use .gif, which I don't know anyone who does. Don't use it. PSD and PSB, of course, Photoshop, you can go there. Yeah. So for image size, so there's two avenues you could go: pixel art or high res. So pixel art, well, you got Undertale, 32 by 32, 64 by 64. Those are very small, 4 kilobytes. And you look at the high resolution, 512, 1 megabyte. So 4 kilobytes to 1 megabyte is a big difference. 2000 by 2000, 16 megabytes. So it starts to increase by a ton. So just keep that in mind, and DPI is important. So set that DPI to like 200, 300 inside of your drawing software. Powers of 2 is also highly recommended for larger resolution. So it doesn't have to be like a perfect square. It could be like 512 by, I think it's 256. You could do that as well. So yeah. And going forward, here's just some tips for both. Common canvas sizes are 24 by 24 and 32 by 32. And for rendering high resolutions, you may want to scale up your pixel art in game. That just means changing your pixels per unit. We'll go over that soon, but that just means basically making the size of your sprite much larger. You can also render the camera at very low resolutions as well for pixel effect if you like that as well. And for high resolutions, for any resolution above 4000 by 4000 for a sprite can become very costly. So use smaller sprites. It'll help have the computer run faster. And this is the most basic thing, but you can get away with scaling down an image, but not always when scaling up. I also didn't write it on here, but there's also a way in Unity to lower the resolution of your image, even if it's really large. So if it's 8000 by 8000, you can still lower the resolution in Unity and have it render at that resolution. It's actually a very cool thing I discovered kind of recently that's actually pretty sick. I love it, actually. Sprite sheets. So one thing about animation and 2D animation is something called sprite sheets. Now you're gonna be using this also for tile sets as well. If you're doing a sort of like RPG, like pixel RPG or stuff, like Stardew Valley, you'll be using tile sets a lot. And so when you export from your preferred animation software, you want to export as multiple images rather than a .gif or MP4. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put all these images into a sprite sheet. And it's basically a sprite sheet is just a bunch of images inside of one big image. And there are some tools for this. Texture Packer is a great one. I love it. It's great. And the bottom is an example of a sprite sheet for a coin spinning. Very simple. And so how to implement your images in the project, very simple. Drag and drop. It's very simple. The File Explorer and the Projects tab are basically the same thing. The only difference is I would recommend you drag into the Projects tab as opposed to the File Explorer. That way Unity can just automatically do its stuff right away. Also, just ignore the .meta file stuff. That's just Unity backend stuff. Texture 2D asset. So what we're going to do is, if anyone has the sample scene open on their Unity, we're going to go to Sprite Basics, and there's a sample scene for us, which goes over a ton of basic stuff. We're not going to go over that in this workshop, since we have a ton of stuff to cover, but if you do have the scene open on your computer, that is available. So for Texture 2D, when you drag your image into the Projects tab, it's either going to look like it's not transparent or it is transparent. So that just means that I either kept it as default, and that's easy to fix, or it turned into a sprite, which means it's more transparent. But just because it's a sprite does not mean the image will have transparency, so keep that in mind. So when you click on the asset, there's a ton of options, but we're only going to go over so many here. There's only a few that are necessary. So let's break that down. So first thing, texture type. This is at the very tippity top of that entire set of settings. So the most common is Sprite 2D and UI. That's the one you're going to be using 99% of the time, Sprite 2D and UI. Another one is normal maps that gives custom lighting data. So you don't have to use a normal map. You can just use the basic default one, and that's okay too. But that's just, if you want to add custom lights, it's cool as well. Cursors for the mouse cursor, that's pretty simple. And then we're going to be setting our texture type for all of our stuff today to Sprite 2D and UI. Okay, now going a little bit further down, sprite mode. This is the type of sprite you're using. Set this to single unless you're using a sprite sheet. Then in that case, use multiple. For pixels per unit, this is the size of the image in relation to the game. So larger number makes the sprite smaller, so keep that in mind. Smaller number, you're going to make it bigger. So for pixel art, you might set this to like 10 or like 15 or 25. Of course, depending on how you're rendering your game. So yeah, if you have the FOV on the camera really small, maybe you don't need to make this as big. Also, just a little tip, keep that consistent throughout your project. Keep that number consistent. That way things are sized at a consistent rate. You're not making things accidentally way too big. Next couple things, pivot. This is the anchor from where your sprite is going to be adjusted from. So if you're flipping the sprite or you're rotating it around, that's the anchor for which it's going to rotate or flip. So keep that in mind. And also scale as well. And for generate physics shape, this creates a boundary around the sprite for physics collisions. This is a lot of like automatic sort of like, if you have a programmer in your game who is like automatically generating objects, this is useful for that sort of thing. It's also good for just like back-end stuff and like keeping these organized. We're not going to look at the sprite editor right now, but throughout the course of this workshop, we're going to look at the sprite editor a little bit. So basically, this thing lets you edit certain properties of a sprite into sprite sheet as well. So continuing forth, moving a little bit down now on those options. Alpha is transparency. Turn it on if you want parts of your image to be see-through. If not, then the more see-through it is within the image that you've given, the darker the pixel. So honestly, most of the time you're going to be keeping it on. You don't really need to have it off ever, so keep that on. But for read and write, keep that off unless you know what you're doing. Even though we're not going to go over read and write at all, I just wanted to let everyone know that you need to keep that off, or else your game is not going to be optimized very well. Generate bitmap. So this is going to create a lower quality version of your sprite for optimization. So this is something that Unity does by itself, actually, which is pretty nice. Basically, it detects, okay, how far away is the sprite from the camera, and then it's going to render that resolution of your sprite. It's very nice, but it does increase the size of your image by a tiny bit, by about 33%. So just keep that in mind. So yeah, filter mode. So this is how edges are cut on a sprite and placed into the scene. So there's a difference between transparency and cutting out a sprite. So you may notice that if you go up here, the cloud platform icon on the right, it looks like it's transparent. So this is what it looks like when it's cut out. Okay. So, but that doesn't mean that it's transparent yet. So there's a difference. So transparency means what the alpha value is in RGBA. A is for alpha, and alpha is going to be transparency. So for filter mode, this is just cutting out the sprite. And so we're going to look at something else that's a transparency, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But basically, filter mode is just amazing for smooth edges without anti-aliasing. And if you're doing pixel art, keep this on point, no filter, because it's going to basically sort of like, it's going to cut out your sprite and it's going to sort of like start blending your edges. And with pixel art, you want your edges to be completely smooth, so you don't want that at all. Trilinear, bilinear for high quality sprites, those are cool. So yeah. Now we're going to go to the sprite render component. Oh yeah, I also forgot to say that the first part of this workshop is going to be a lot more boring than the second part, because the second part is going to have a ton of game information as well. We're going to have a ton of examples for games too. So stay tuned. For a sprite render, so whenever you have a game object and you want to put your image into a game object, you're going to use a sprite renderer. So that's part of a game object and it's a component. So sprite, drag and drop it into there. You can also press the plus button if you want to. For color, RGBA. You can also have a custom material that can make the sprite glow with HDR coloring too. And for flip, I think it flips the sprite on the axis chosen if you press the button. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Draw mode. This is how your image is drawn to the screen. Only necessary if you have your sprite set up specifically for the chosen draw method. I'm not going to go into those today, but if you want to search up what that means, it is totally okay to do that. I search up things all the time for my projects, and I've used Unity for years. So yeah, do not feel bad to search up stuff. Mask interaction. So this one's a little interesting. It is a tiny bit complicated at first, but this is basically a way to make your image sort of like not appear by having a sprite laid over it. So actually, I'm going to go into the sprite sample scene here, and I'm going to show you guys what I'm talking about. Now let's move it around here. I'm going to go all the way down and find it. Here we go. Okay. So if you notice, let me find this one. Okay. So we have our sprite here, and I got to find the sprite. Oh, it's down here. Oh man. It's one of these. Here we go. All right. So this sprite has a circle mask on it. And what this basically is happening is we have this mask that's basically blocking out the edges of our sprite here. And so that's just an example. It's not a great example, but it's basically a way to show like, okay, how can we block certain parts of our sprite if we want to get a certain effect to it. So that is what we can do for that. Okay, shall continue. Material. This is the material for what your sprite is using. Lit just means hit by lights. Unlit means it ignores lights. This can get more advanced, but uncommon to use anything beyond those two for 2D sprites. For anyone who uses like 3D and stuff, you might notice, why are we not using that many materials for like sprites and whatnot? It's because most of our main visual stuff is based on the sprite. You can also set custom textures for the sprite as well, so like normals or specular maps or ambient occlusion. You can set that directly within the sprite itself, so you don't need a material for that. And that's why for the material, this is just for our basic lighting data. So yeah. And continuing forth, our sorting layer. So there's sorting layer and ordering layer. Sorting layer is your primary way to do that. You can name it whatever you want. This is the depth order for sorting sprites, and sprites don't write depth, so this is needed. And you might be wondering, okay, well, Garrett, there are tons and tons of games in Unity where you can see sprites within depth. Like, for example, Hollow Knight, you can see sprites within depth, and they use this parallax effect where they put some sprites really far back that are huge and some sprites really close, which are small, and that way you get this sort of parallax effect. But unfortunately, and this is a little complicated, but sprites can be seen in perspective, but not layered properly, okay? And this has to do with transparency versus opaque materials. Complicated business. I know someone's going to have a question about it, so I wanted to make that a little bit clear. So you do need to write this sorting layer out. It's very simple, though. If you just want to set everything to default and order it by number, bigger number equals it's more in front. So very, very simple. Rendering layer mask. This is a light mask for 2D light. So let's say you have a 2D light and you don't want it to hit this sprite. Just turn off that rendering layer mask. It's a sounds a little sounds a little hard, but once you like dabble with it a little bit, it's a little bit easier to realize. Okay, next thing, 2D render pipeline. This is the last part of all these definitions I'm going to give you guys. So yeah, and if you guys are in Unity, this is the VGDA render pipeline folder. So what is a render pipeline? So it's the instructions for how the game is going to draw the graphics onto the screen. The current render pipeline we're using is URP2D. Jomar is battling it out over there. Everything that is rendered in this game is based on the rules and principles of the render pipeline that you're using. So here's some other examples of render pipelines that we're using today. Built-in, very old pipeline, scriptable render pipeline. This is one that's made to be edited. It's actually part of the URP as well, so that's a universal render pipeline, which is what we're using today. It's what most games use as well. This is optimized for low-end machines and high-definition render pipeline. This is the kind of render pipeline that is used if you're making like films or whatnot, or like really like expensive games. Optimized for high-end machines, as you can see. So in the folder, we're going to look at the pipeline asset and the pipeline asset renderer. We're not going to look at project settings today. That is so big. It's so complicated. First things first, depth texture and opaque texture. Turn that on. It doesn't hurt to have it off, and a lot of the times you might run into some issues with like depth or whatever, and you realize, oh, I didn't have this on, and it's just nice to have it on. SRP batcher and dynamic batching. So this is the method for which the game is going to optimize how it draws your sprites. So how Unity has their sprites render is, Jamar's going at it again, so it's in painter's order. So it goes from back to front. And so what you'll want to do is, in the game, how you would want to set it up is so that if it's a sprite that you don't see, you don't want it to render right. Even if it's inside of the scene, you don't want to have a sprite that you don't see to render, because then it's going to use memory, and that's just not efficient. But SRP batching fixes that very, very well. There's also one other setting you need to turn on, though, on the camera, which we'll go over. But yeah, so this works great for sprites, and dynamic batching is more for 3D stuff. That's just for keeping things like static. If you set like an object static, we're not going over static game objects today, but basically when you set something static, it means it's not going to move at all within your scene. And Unity loves when you have an object that's static. That way it can make tons of optimization stuff. More pipeline asset stuff. HDR. This allows for better visuals on certain screens. This is slightly more expensive, but doesn't really matter on small projects. You guys could probably turn it on, and it won't matter at all. This can only be seen on certain screens, though, such as OLED. So if you guys have an OLED screen, it'll look cool. Anti-aliasing, MSAA, pixel edge smoothing. This using is subpixel techniques, which I know is a little complicated. Don't worry about it. Basically, just disable it unless you absolutely need it. Now, Garrett, you may be asking, Garrett, why are we disabling anti-aliasing? It's a small project. I can just turn it on. But so there is two different types of anti-aliasing you can turn on. You can turn it on project-wide, or you can turn it on just for the camera. So I would recommend only having the camera take care of your anti-aliasing. There's also a setting where you can just turn on anti-aliasing for the camera specifically. In render scale, this is the resolution scale for what your game will be rendered in. 2 is double the scale, 0.5 is half the scale. So yeah. Now we're going to look at the pipeline asset renderer. So this is a little bit more abstract stuff, but I'm going over some stuff that hopefully is relevant. Default material type, lit or unlit material. This is just a workflow optimization. Is your scene going to be lit or by lights or not? If it's not, then don't need to have this on. You can set this to unlit. And for your depth stencil buffer, this is basically, is the engine going to read depth in your scene? So let's say you're making a visual novel game or whatever. You're just gonna have a drawn background, like a character in your UI. You're not gonna have depth for that, so you can turn that off. But if you're doing some sort of 2D side scroller with parallax stuff, then maybe you'll want that on. So just keep that in mind. Now for the last part of our pipeline asset render. So this is going to be the base blending of your 2D scene lighting. So mask texture channel, this is your RGBA mask for your light. This uses color channeling, which is advanced, but the most basic form of color channeling is basically you just pick one single channel. So for Unity, it's R, which means red. And so this allows you to create different versions of your blend modes that only affect one color. So let's say you had an additive mask and you only wanted that to affect your reds in your scene, then this will only do that for the red colors within your scene. It's a little bit weird at first, but it actually allows you to access some more blend modes than what is just additive, multiplicative, and subtractive that is available in Unity. So those are some ways you could do that. You probably would dabble with it a little bit. It's kind of a little weird, but yeah, just keep that in mind. If you're not using masks, then you can swap out a setting for subtractive too. Yeah. Now we're gonna look at camera. Now we're gonna go over a ton of cool stuff. So VGA camera rendering is the scene file folder you want to go to. So we're gonna look at some sample scenes here. First one's gonna be Hollow Knight. So we're going to go over. Oh, actually, I'm going a little ahead of myself. There's one more slide. So what are some stuff we're going over here? So first thing we're gonna look at is camera projection. Look at how visual depth of sprites happens within Unity, putting them in a 3D space, and also how spaced are they actually within Unity? How how far away are they from each other? Look at sprite sorting, how sorting is needed even with camera depth. Just one other thing, what do game assets actually look like within the game? We're gonna look at things up close, which is awesome.
Can you pause real quick?
We're halfway through this.
Yeah. Let me actually see about connecting to a different Wi-Fi. Because right now the streaming on Discord, your webcam or the webcam is pausing. It's showing one frame every 15 seconds. It's pretty scuffed.
Okay.
So let me see if I can make it a little bit faster.
Hi, Sam.
Okay, if this doesn't load soon, then we'll just leave it as is.
I feel like it's okay. It's just the webcam.
We're about to start. Yeah.
No.
Okay, nice. All right.
Okay.
Good.
All right, cool. All right. Okay, we're gonna continue again. Where was I? We were at the presentation. Okay, we're gonna look at the Unity stuff. We're gonna look at Hollow Knight. So let me go to the actual Hollow Knight Fountain. Okay. Now I gotta find this thing. Here we go. Okay. Also, if you have a bunch of icons on your screen, there's this button on the top right of your scene view called the gizmos. Turn that off. Also, if you don't want to see the grid, there's this little value here. Turn that off. We don't need either of those right now. So what we're looking at here is the Hollow Knight Fountain. This is from an area which you might be familiar with. Within this, you can see all the different layering that's going on. So there are 6 different objects within this, and they're all layered within this fountain game object which we have, which is just an empty game object, and it's basically just what we have for our whole entire thing here. I'm going to adjust my view here. It's a little small. Don't need this. Okay. So this is where you can control your entire thing. If you want to move this entirely, you can do that. Oh man, is it Command Z? Yes. Okay. And then within your game view, it looks like that. And one reason why the background is blue is because in our main camera, if you go under Environment, our background type is just skybox. We set it as a solid color. If we want to change that to like green or something, we can. And within our game view, it'll be green. So this is what it looks like for our projection to be in perspective. Let's say I turn this to orthographic. It won't look that different actually. Okay, how should I do this? Normally I use two screens. I'm going to do this. Okay, if I move this, you can see how it's going to get smaller if it goes in the back. But notice how it's, even if you put it in front, it's going to still be behind it. That's because of sprite sorting. And you can see I have this main statue layered in as order in layer 6. And like all the other stuff are in different orders. So this one is more in front, so it's 8, 9, 10. So let's say I put this one at like 2. Notice how all of a sudden it's behind this. And that's because even though there's camera depth, there's still just some like stuff with like transparency and opaque objects. It's a little bit complicated, as I said. But yeah, keep that in mind that order in layer is important for your sprites. So if I go to main camera, orthographic, is it going to change your view? Yes, it is. So that's what it looks like in orthographic. This is in perspective. Sprite's a little bit smaller in perspective. And when we move the camera, which I'm going to do this, I'm going to move. Oh man, okay. Boom. There we go. Now you can see within the sprites will move in perspective. As you can see here, look at this area right over here. And then when we move to the right side, notice how that gap opens up. That's because we layered them within depth. So that's a basic way you can layer stuff within your scene and have that sort of parallax effect without doing anything complicated. It's just setting your camera to perspective and layering them within depth and setting the sorting layer properly. So those are some cool stuff. I think that is everything for this scene, if I'm correct. Yeah. Okay. Next thing we're going over is another sample scene. We have 2 more. Next is DDLC. Visual novel stuff. So this is Sayori's basic interaction. Let's go back to, oh no, again, I have myself again because we got to look at what we're going to go over. Couple things here. Camera projection again, orthographic view this time. Depth of sprites now does not exist. Game object setup, how sprites are made so they can easily be adjusted, turning them on or off. Easy for the programmers. And also we'll notice in the actual view of the game, the head is a different game object from the torso. So there are 2 sprites. And we're going to look at image filtering. Why the character has their filtering set to point no filter, even though it's a high resolution asset, as I said before, even though these sprites are all high resolution, and I said set them to their trilinear or bilinear filter. Why we're using point no filter. And for our UI, just layering how UI is rendered in overlay, so it'll always be over your game assets, and Text Mesh Pro as well, which is the core component for text within Unity. So now let's go to our DDLC. DDLC save. All right, boom. Okay. So for a couple things to go over here. This is going to get a little crazy here. I'm gonna make this big. Okay. What's going on here? Okay, I'm gonna. Boom. All right. Why is it doing this? Oh. What? Sorry. Okay. For some reason the UI is over this thing. I don't know why. Okay, but so this is the most basic DDLC visual novel type story if you're going for that. So in the main camera we have this set to orthographic. So that means there's no depth at all. Not any depth. You don't need to worry about that. But you still need to worry about sprite ordering and layering. So just keep that in mind when you do that. Also notice how there's a thing for heads and a thing for torso. So how the developer decided to make the sprites for this game and the emotions was that they decided to split the head into two parts, the head and the body into two parts, which is the torso and the heads here. So let's say, for example, we wanted to turn off the smile game object, and we wanted a concerned one. Boom, right there. You just turn that on. And if you want a talking one, boom, now it's talking, and it's still completely fine, and it works well. I just noticed something about this sprite. Interesting. Okay. Odd. Okay. Whatever. Okay, so that is. So also notice how all these game objects are laid out so that you can just turn them on and off. That's so that for your programmers, it's very simple. Let's say in dialogue, we're gonna go from like smiling to like talking. Very simple. Just turn off the smile game object. Your programmers will do that. Boom, and then talking, turn that on. Boom. Very simple, right? And then for torso, like how they did it was same thing. So we can just have the same thing, but let's say you wanted to go from casual to school. Now we're in school outfit. Very, very simple. And also, I'm actually not too sure why. I think it's maybe for hand movements, but they also split these up between left and right. That is, I assume it's just for hand movements, is my guess. But yeah, those are just some strategies as well for your own self. If you're going to have characters with several emotions and hand movements, maybe go for that sort of route where you're specifically drawing the character so that their head is split between their body. That works very nicely, it seems like, for how they decided to do this for the game. Next thing we're going to go over is. Yes, sir.
Is there a reason why there's a visible line on the? I think this is the camera side.
Yeah.
A visible line between their left and right side.
Yeah. So that is one thing that I was going to go over. So when I was making this, there was no visible line, which is what I was going to go over. So the reason why I originally thought there was a visible line was because was your texture filtering, which we were going to go over, which basically is on your sprite asset where we set this to point no filter. So my guess, and I'm actually not sure if it is still there. Okay, so yeah, there is still that line. So normally, actually, if we go to HD, there's no line. That's why. I guess in the free aspect you can see it, but in full HD, set it like this, you can't see it. Basically, the idea is, okay, well, let's say we set this filtering to bilinear, and we apply this. I'm on the casual. I'm not even on the one that's going to be affected. Let's say we set this to bilinear, and we set the other one to bilinear too. And we set our head talking. Which one's the talking one? I gotta figure this out. Don't worry, chat. We'll figure this out eventually. Bilinear. Boom. Okay, now it's not there. All right, you know what? I don't know. This is something I was going to go over, but I guess. Okay, well, the reason why the line is there is really your resolution of how you're going to render. So render 1920 by 1080. But also, if you ever run into any issues with lines, check out your filter mode. Just set these to point no filter. That way, you're for sure getting the exact model for your sprites. Lining up your high resolution sprites like this is always going to be a little finicky with lines, so just keep in mind. Oh, we can see the line right there. Linear, bilinear stuff right there. That's when you're zoomed in, but it does exist. So just keep that in mind. I guess. Okay, it's a little harder to see on this one because the screen is broken, but if we look over here, if we just select these, we can see. We can look at the scene view. You select these, you can see how the outline is super close. So, yeah, just keep that in mind. Yeah, and last thing we're gonna go over is the UI. Now I'm gonna actually turn on this UI. Boom. UI canvas is way bigger than your basic sprites. You'll notice because it just zoomed out a ton. Your UI is your layout. So within your game view, this is going to be overlaid. As you can see here, it's overlaid like that, and it's just a simple box and a text thing. We're not going to go over this too much, but yeah. Yeah, you had a question?
So for UI canvas, it's always going to be like that, but when you start the game, it's just going to fit the way.
Yep. Yeah. If you don't want to use your scroll button a whole bunch, you can just double click on the game object, and it'll take you right to it. So that's very useful for like workflow stuff. So yeah, for text field and stuff, we're going to over UI later, so we're not going to touch this too much right now, but yeah. This is just to show you guys what it looks like whenever you're making it in Unity. It's very big, so yeah. Next thing we're going to go over, next game, Stardew Valley. Yes, sir. We're going to look at camera projection again, orthographic again. This is the most fundamental view for rendering pixel RPG games, which is just a angled top-down view. That's what it's called. Of course, once again, depth of sprites does not exist, so you're going to have to do sorting layers to order them. We're going to look at tile mapping and sprite sheets, using the sprite sheet to cut down a large pixel art image and do smaller chunks that we'll place. We're going to make sure that the pixels are correctly cut out as well, and how to actually place a tile into the scene, which is actually a little bit more complicated than you might think. Also look at image filtering again. This is point no filter because it's pixel art. Now let's go into our Unity. Is this? Check the time. 5:40. Okay. All right. Now let's open up our Stardew Valley one. Save. Okay. So this is just two sample scenes for like a house. We're gonna make a third one today. And what's going on here is we just have all these sprites here. You can select it like this, and all these are here. These are individual tiles. So in our tile map, we're gonna click down here, open tile palette, and basically this is going to open up our tile palette, and we're going to have our tile map here. It's a little bit small, so let me make this bigger. There you go, like that. Also, if you have these weird windows that are opened up, usually it's just because of like how it's opened up. There's like little bars usually to like help you size things. Like in this instance, you can move this and it'll let you size things properly. All right, so which one do we want to build today? Any takers? Which one we want to actually put into our scene today? Any one of these? The farm building?
A barn, yeah.
Barn? Want to do this one? All right, cool. All right. So let's say we want to put in our barn into the scene. So I'm going to drag this over here, so that way I can actually see my game. And I'm going to take this out because we do not need this right now. What we're going to do? Oh, I actually placed a block. If you guys accidentally place anything, deselect from your grid and then close out your tile palette. Why is it not doing this? Please, I don't use tile palettes a lot, guys, all right? I learned it just for this one, just for this workshop. Why is it? Okay, well, we can just start drawing because we're at the right spot anyways. So what's really nice about tile palettes is that if you want to draw a whole bunch, you can just go like this, okay? Boom. Now you just select this little mouse icon right here, drag over what you want to draw, and open up your brush. I'm going to do that again. And we need to select it. We need to draw. Boom. Okay. Why is it not doing this? Please. What? How did I draw into my... Man, okay. Guys, I don't use the tile palette a lot. I don't know why. Oh, here we go. Boom. All right. Now if we do this, it's going to go right. No. Okay. Wow, it's not changing at all. Okay. I need to press grid. No. Okay. Odd. I don't know why it's not selecting this stuff. This is exactly what I did and it worked, but I guess it's not doing this time. Anyways,
Wait, what if you select the mouse cursor?
Yeah.
You drag over everything, and then you don't put, and then you move over to the scene, and then.
Yeah, it's not doing it.
Have you tried copying and pasting?
I guess so.
Command C,
Here, now, after you select that, now put the brush and go into your scene.
That's what I did. It's not doing it. Yeah, I got no idea. I was able to do this earlier, so I'm not sure what's going on. Oh, I need to select on map.
Right, guys, it's a teaching moment. If you're able to figure this out, you get to become a BGDA officer.
Yeah. What?
You get to play the Wii.
All right, I don't want to go over this too much. I'm just going to skip over this part.
You get to play the Switch too.
You're right.
I don't know why I can draw in my sprite palette. I didn't even know you could do that. I don't know why I can do that, but whatever. We're just going to continue forth here. So the last thing I guess we're going to go over for this is all right, man. All right, I don't know what's going on here. I was going to close out of the tile palette. Get out of here. There we go. Okay. Okay. So for our grid here, for our sprites, let me go to the sample scene here. I'll go to like camera rendering. Stardew Valley. Boom. So a lot of sprites here. Okay, keep that in mind. Make sure you put them all in a folder for that. So notice in our filter mode, this is set to point no filter because it's pixel art. Okay, set this to bilinear. Apply. Look how blurry it is. Now maybe you like that. Maybe you like that blurriness, but a lot of people don't. So keep that in mind. Point no filter, and it'll look nice and clean. Okay. So that's your Stardew Valley stuff. Now, thankfully, we don't need to worry about any more tile palettes, so we can continue forward. Okay. Other camera options as well. This is just some miscellaneous stuff. Occlusion culling. This is going to disable rendering for objects that can't be seen from the camera. Always keep this on. Saves on FPS. Background type. This is just for how the sky is going to be rendered. Skybox lets you set a custom texture. Solid color. It's exactly what it sounds like. And uninitialized. This is not going to render a background, and it defaults to yellow. Output texture. This is a custom texture for how you can render different resolutions. So if you want a pixel art game, maybe you use this, but I would recommend watching a tutorial to try this. It's not exactly the easiest thing to do. So it's also not required for a pixel art game either. So you don't have to do this, but it's just an avenue if you want to go to for doing pixel art. And also, just for the future, if you guys have the scene open, turn on post-processing. Because next thing we're going to go over is post-processing, volume profiles. So VGA samples, post-processing. That's the folder we're going in now. So what is post-processing? This is the second to last pass that the engine runs in the view of the game. So there are some other ones that, so there are some post-processing stuff that runs before this, but this is the last one. The very last pass is UI. Normally, this is used to add extra effects to your game, so that's why it's at the very end. Many things go under post-processing, but the most basic version of post-processing is called a volume profile or global volume, which is what we're going to use today. Also, if anyone is curious, a pass is just one set of things that the game renders to the screen for one frame. So, and then you have multiple draw calls that can happen in one pass. So first thing we're going to do is, okay, how to make a global volume. So very simple. Right-click in your project, inside of your project, like folder, files, whatnot. Click Create, Rendering, Volume Profile. It's a huge menu. That's why I'm showing you guys how to do this. So yeah, just Create, Rendering, and Volume Profile. And part 2 for that, you go into your hierarchy, and we're going to create our global volume. So this is different from our volume profile. Global volume this time. So in our hierarchy, volume, global volume. And some extra notes about this camera, as I said before, turn on post-processing. Volume profile asset. So this is what's going to contain all of our post-processing effects, such as bloom, HSV, vignette, depth of field, etc. And our global volume, this is what's going to hold our volume profile. It's going to let us to easily swap in and out different volume profiles. And this is our sample scene for today. Thank you, Brackies. Brackies is going to be following us throughout this post-processing part. So be ready. Yeah, this is our sample scene. And so here's all of our pre-made volume profiles. So what we have is our base effect here. And then we have all these that use our base effect plus something else. So tone mapping, shadows, midtones, and highlights, grain, chromatic aberration. So if we go into our, this is our, okay, that's right. I'm not moving the Unity game yet. This is our base effect. So vignette plus bloom, see, it adds some glow. If we go up, there was no glow, and now there's glow. The other, you see this thing right here, that's a light, so it's not glowing, it's just light. That's our 2D light. But with this, it's actually glowing. That's called bloom. And then we also have our vignette, which is the dark part around our scene, and that's sort of like a dark, like black gradient going on. Just a very, actually, this isn't really that subtle. It's actually pretty not subtle, but yeah, it's there to add some sort of effect that you can add at the very end of your game. So now here are some other effects as well. Chromatic aberration, you can see on around the border of the picture, you see like this little like weird RGB effect. It's a little harder to see on the slide, I realize, so I'm just going to go into the game and show you guys. If we open up our Unity thing, now let's go to, oh God, not the tile map, please no. Okay, post-processing. Dungeon scene, boom. Save. Volume profile. Environment, boom. This is our scene here. Once again, if you ever get lost in your scene view, just double click on one of these things here. I'm sure it'll take you to the thing that's properly sized. So we have all of our volume profiles here. And in our hierarchy, we have our global volume. So in our inspector here, this is where it's going to hold our volume profile. So the one I have on right now is shadows, midtones, and highs. So let's say I wanted to change the midtones so they were a lot more brighter. Boom. As you can see, they're a lot more brighter. If you want to turn them darker, boom. There you go. And the game view is the same thing. So yeah, kind of looks kind of cool if you like that. But yeah, obviously things are way more bright. And also you do Command Z if you want. Just undo that as well if you need. Also, if you like want to change like the vignette or whatnot, it might get red for some reason. You can do that in our game view. You can see now the vignette's red. So yeah, this is just some examples. You can play with it a little bit inside of this sample scene if you want, but and also kind of see like how things work as well. Also, our global volume, it literally just holds the volume profile you're using. So if you change the values in this game object, it's going to change the values within the volume profile that you're using. So just keep that in mind. So let's say we have our shadows and midtones and highs, and let's say we change the bloom color to, oh, we gotta turn this on. Make sure you turn on the value. So we turn our bloom color to like a red. Now it's a glowing red. Within our shadows, midtones, and highs, now the bloom color is red. So just keep that in mind when you're moving it around. So yeah, that is all for our post-processing, I believe.
Question?
Yes, sir.
Are each of these like effects being applied to these individual elements? Or
So it's to the whole game. So including like random like pictures you might add or something to the game. So how it works is, so it's rendered near the very end of the game, and basically it's going to apply every like it's going to apply all these effects to all of your game objects and whatnot visually after all these have been rendered. So in one frame, all of your like characters and whatnot, your platforms, your background is going to be rendered, and then the post-processing gets rendered onto it. And so that's why you can have these effects on it, because it gets rendered afterwards. And so yes, it will affect everything. Is that what you're asking for?
But so with these like glow elements, is there like a way to like specifically say that these things should glow and these things shouldn't?
Yeah. So for bloom, so what you're asking about is bloom. So we're looking at the threshold here. So our threshold is set to 1. So that basically means usually you want to set this to like either 0 to 1. I don't know why you can set this higher, but yeah, it really should just be like set to 0 or 1. But basically, what bloom is basically, okay, how bright is this pixel? And then we're going to add a little bit of a glow to it. I'm not sure exactly what the math is for that or whatnot, but basically it just adds a little bit of glow, and then basically you can select the intensity for it. So if you want to make it really intense, it's not changing in the view. It's because I did not set it to that. Set to our base effect. It's going to change a lot. There we go. So we change our intensity if we want, but then for threshold, let's say we want it to be really high. Now, because the pixel is only going between 0 and 1, for brightness is never going to hit the threshold. But if we start going down now, it's going to be just a tiny bit bright because I guess the intensity is still adding to the glow, and so making things just a little bit brighter. It's a little bit complicated. I'm gonna be honest, math and whatnot. I'm actually not sure why the threshold goes. You can do above 1, but my guess is it has to do with intensity. So mess with intensity a little bit. I would just set the threshold to 1 though, and adjust the intensity. And also, if you want to make something specifically glow and not glow, so that is where you're gonna do like custom materials. And so there's this type of color you can do called an HDR color. And in an HDR color, you can change the intensity of something, and the intensity is how much it's going to glow. So really high intensity, lots of glow. Like things glow a lot, and so that's how you're going to get that glow effect. That's kind of shader stuff. Very simple shader stuff though, so you could slowly search that up and just learn how to do that. But yeah. For sprites, 2D is always different from 3D, so just keep that in mind. But yeah, does that answer your question better? All right, cool. All right. Does anyone So easy.
Any examples of what a UI canvas looks like? I got a few right here.
Don't worry, we're going over some. All right, wait, you have one for your own? Show it later. All right. Lethal laser tag? Lethal laser tag UI? All right. UI canvas. So I think I already said all this, so we'll continue forward. So we're gonna look at some examples here. We're gonna look at 4 examples. So first one, The Last of Us Part 1. So this is a very simple one. We'll notice 3 major parts. You have your dialogue, your health, and your ammo and whatnot, and you have this little tooltip right here. So let's go through each one of them. Very simple. This is your text right here, okay? And then for this one, this is your health bar. So this is the health bar, and this is your ammo. So things are very simple in this one because of the style, and you're going to notice a lot of these UIs are based on the style of the game. So whenever you're making UI, make sure you keep it in style. And we also have our tooltip here. So one special thing about the tooltip here, and we don't have a video to show it, but this is within the world space view. So this is not directly overlaid throughout your game. This is going to be within the world. And that's one special thing about UI is that you can have certain elements be within the world and be within the overlay. And so they have the tooltip here because specifically so that one, it just isn't some random little like text like in the middle of your screen that's just saying stealth kill. It's within the game and it's still following you through it. And it's also really useful because it's a tooltip and it's going to tell you, okay, what do you need to do? Because there's a lot of things you can do in this game that are like niche and unique, and so it gives these tooltips for a specific purpose, which is that, you know, what button do I need to press, you know? So just keep that in mind. Next one, Lethal Company. This one is just a very simple one. UI fits the horror visual style, the visual style, sort of thing. Very, very simple. Just literally an overlay. You've got your main menu, like logo, and then your text. Next one, Balatro. So this one is a very special case. So this entire game is played within the UI. So all these elements here, besides the background, is in UI, and there's also a little post-process effect as well. You probably can see it better in game, but it's this sort of like old school TV like sort of effect going on, which is a post-process effect. And so one thing about this is if you guys ever make a game where it's just UI, you might have like your entire game just be played on the UI, which is what happens in Balatro. So just keep that in mind as you're going through. And also UI in Unity does not use a sprite render; it uses an image a renderer. So it's a little bit different. You don't have as many settings, but you can still use a sprite for the image render. It doesn't really matter. It's just there are a tiny few differences for rendering that do make a difference in the long run if you're doing a more complicated game. We're not going over those today, but don't worry. I'm sure you guys could sort that out. And for our last one, I love this UI. It's the Persona 3 Reload UI. Yeah, it's amazing. So some things about this one. Now, I don't expect anyone to be able to do this, okay? But how they rendered this was, so first things first, the 3D model, okay? So this is a 3D model they have over the game. Now, what they do is they have a separate camera for the 3D model, okay? And they specifically have the 3D model set up so that they can use color masking. And so they also do this thing called color grading for the shadow on the character. Basically means, okay, how bright is this pixel? What color is it going to be? And for the case here, we have the shadows. The color grade goes from a white to a dark, or actually no, I think the color grading probably goes from a white to a light blue to a dark blue. That's my guess. And then how they have the 3D model set up is that the coat here, this is like a coat. It's like a school thing. You also have this lanyard here, and the hair are all colored the exact same value, so that you can do a color mask and you can have these overlaid within the game, and that's why you have this cool like effect going on. As you can see in the top right, even though the model goes downwards, you can still see all the effects behind it, and it doesn't weirdly distort it. And these other background water elements are literally just like animated on their own. There's not anything special about it. They literally just drew the water here and they animated it like that. And then there's some extra gradients they added on top as well, which makes some stuff very cool. Yeah, very complicated stuff. Don't expect you guys to know that, but it's what like it's the like best of the best like UI designers are in Persona. It's awesome. Now this is just a very basic scene example for how 9-slice and fill image works. So this is like how I think of 9-slice is like dialogue boxes, and how I think of fill is like health bars. So fill and 9-slice are very, very easy ways to scale assets without like ruining their resolution or size. And one thing that's very important about UI, which in this scene you'll notice, is that width and height, changing width and height is different from changing your scale. So keep that in mind. That's because 9-slice specifically listens to the width and the height to determine, okay, how wide is the sprite going to be? How tall is it going to be? And then it scales properly so that it doesn't look weird. And so I did not mean to press escape. We're going to look at a Persona 5 Royal battle example in Unity, which showcases both of these elements. Actually, I think it only shows the health bar, but the DDLC one does use 9-slice, which is very, very cool. But let's go to the Persona 5 battle example, and you guys are going to look at some a lot of game objects here. So go to user interface, Persona 5. Boom. All right. This is entirely made on the UI, so we're going to double click on canvas, and we're going to see our entire UI here. So there's a lot of elements going on, okay? Look at all these as I open these drop-down menus. All these are individual game objects for individual images. a lot. Okay, so when you're making a complicated UI like this, if you do, it's going to be a lot of game objects. Okay, like even if you're not making a complicated UI and it's literally just a health bar and like other stuff, it can still be like a dozen. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So let's say we looked at character stats for this character. I'm curious what this character is. This one is over here. So this one. So notice um, the white part up here is an individual game object. The black here, this black sort of background right here, the HP, SP, text, text to your divider, the
Okay, let's turn that on. Turn this off. Okay.
Basically, for a game of the game, I have the
Can you talk?
turn on.
after this
What?
credits
There
scene.
should be like a
No, into the.
Fade out.
Oh,
It fades
hello.
to the
Can you hear me?
And then when I go to the settings
No,
menu, then
can't hear
Yeah.
that.
it resets
Man.
the credits faded instead of starting at the
Always wait for this to charge. 2 minutes.
Hold on, hold on.
Oh, now it's on. Hello? Yeah, this one's on now.
Oh, I just changed it. I just changed it to MacBook Pro.
We literally have like 5 minutes left. Want to go through real quick?
Turn that off.
Turn it off. Hello, hello.
height demonstrated in increment on the height and increment on the
Yeah.
width.
Height and the width. Yep. And in your UI, it's called a rect transform. It's a special type of transform for UI. It's really called width and height. So you see right here, it's right below your X, Y, and Z. It's also separate from your scale too, as I had mentioned. So yeah. I believe that is that is basically the workshop here for today. I already went through this stuff. Resources. So Unity Asset Store, Spider's resource. Unity Asset Store is a great repository for Unity assets. Plenty of things 2D and 3D to look at. And for Spider's resource, this is what I used to get all of our game sprites today. So Persona, Stardew Valley. I know you like that.
The Unity.
Oh, the Unity Asset Store.
Yeah.
You like that? Yep, it's great. It's great. More stuff. Texture Packer. This is how we can use it to merge our sprite sheets, or merge our sprites into a sprite sheet. Very, very useful. Also optimizes mesh of sprites if you're more advanced in that sort of field. And also Google Fonts, tons of free fonts for your games, many available for commercial use. Nonsensical 2D, a lot of good advice for 2D game art, and he has a great video on sizing art. Ace Rolla, if you want to feel dumb, he goes over a lot of technical industry level stuff. And also like analyzes like how like games are rendered and whatnot. Even at like a basic level, he goes through like a wide range. He's like from like basic level to like very high level stuff. So he's actually very useful for like watching videos and like looking at stuff. He's looked at like Persona 3, like Lethal Company, other stuff. Yeah.
You stand right there and tell me without the glasses and tell us if it looks similar to you.
Maybe I am Ace Rolla. Who knows? Maybe I'm just advertising. That's why I became an officer, so I could advertise my own YouTube channel. And last one, Unity Assets Project. This is the one that we've all been kind of, well, actually not all, but we've been sort of going through it. All of our stuff that we put into the Assets Project is so that for artists, it means you can just grab code and apply the stuff to your characters and have them work properly. And for our programmers, so that you can grab some art assets and use those as your main visual design. Yep. That's it. Unity Rendering Workshop.